Good morning. Good morning from Northwest Lower Michigan, where I have the privilege of living in a very beautiful part of the country. I live near a national park, the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lake Shore. I live about a mile from Lake Michigan. I have a yard full of wildlife most of the time, and it's magnificent, nothing short of spectacular. Thank you for joining me. My name is Susan. I do have a new YouTube channel and a blog and a website titled Crow Quill Tarot. And the reason I named it Crow Quill is because that's how I was introduced to the tarot, was through my crow quill pen drawings. As a child and into my teenage years, I would sit in my room for hours at a time drawing with a crow quill pen. And I would often get involved, so entranced in the drawing that they would become quite fantastical. One thing would turn into another. The woman's hair would be flowing in the wind and it would turn into birds in the sky and things like that. And a dear friend of mine was at a garage sale one day and bought a deck of cards for me. She told me she paid a dime for them. It was in the 1960s. And they were wrapped in a rubber band. No box, no little white instruction booklet, nothing. So it was literally, she brought them to me because the drawings on the cards reminded her of my doodles. And I was fascinated. And it was several years before I even ever heard the word tarot. I didn't even know what they were, let alone, ever have access to any kind of information. And there wasn't much information available back then. And when I did eventually, probably decades later, find information about these cards and what they were and what they meant, the meanings that I had assigned to the cards, come to find out, were exactly the meanings of the cards. And so when asked if I'm self-taught, I say actually the cards taught me. And what I mean by that is that, I'd shuffle the cards, obviously, and I would draw a card for the day and stick it in my purse or my backpack or my pocket and go off. And I would see the artwork, the imagery of the card throughout the course of the day. And so they began to have a very practical meaning to me. And I appreciate that very much, more so all the time. So in case you haven't, figured out, I've been reading the cards now for more than 50 years. I'm retired and on Social Security, so you do the math. And I've been reading professionally for over 20 years now, and I've been teaching classes for about that long. One of the reasons I got into teaching classes was because people used to say to me, well, how do you memorize those 78 cards, all the meanings of the cards? And I used to say, well, there's no memorization to them. There's no memorization to them. They're very simple. They're very pragmatic. They're very straightforward. They're not shallow or superficial by any means. They're very deep. And they are a methodology, if you will, for self-awareness, for increasing our self-awareness, for self-actualization, for self-advancement. And therefore, I call them therapy in a box. My therapist isn't available 24/7. My friends aren't available 24/7, but my tarot cards are. If I have a question and I can't figure out the answer, if I'm feeling anxious about anything, if I can't sleep and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever the challenge is that's going on in my life, I can shuffle and draw a card and immediately gain insight, because they are simple and practical and straightforward. And not only do they allow us to access that higher perspective or higher level of thinking, if you will, but they also give us a practical, day-to-day, what's the next step? Okay, that's great, that advice. What do I do with it? And they'll say, do this, then do this, then do this. They're also like a GPS system, if you will, a spiritual GPS system. But GPS, when you punch in the address where you want to go, the destination you want to get to, it doesn't give you all the directions at once. That would be too confusing. It tells you the next turn to make. And the Tarot is very much the same way. And so, I've kind of gone off on a tangent. But what I wanted to do this morning was record a video response, actually. I wanted to record a video response to Amy at Strength Reversed. She has a new YouTube channel, and I adore her. She's very funny, practical, down to earth, straightforward. She's a teacher, which I have an immense amount of respect for. Any teacher in America today gets my undying respect. I mean, it's not enough that, they spend more hours with our children, who are our future, than anyone else in their young lives, teaching them, guiding them, influencing them. But in America today, they have to be willing to lay their lives down to protect those kids, let's face it. And yet they are paid barely a living wage. We have it so skewed here. Our culture is broken. Fortunately, we have the Tarot to help us fix it, to help us all grow up. That's what the Tarot does. That's one of the things I appreciate about it. But Amy put out a request that we respond with what are the things that excite us or make us most happy about the Tarot or give us the most joy. And I like Amy's response at Strength Reversed. I like Simon's response at the Hermit's Cave. And I like Jen's response at Jen's Balanced Tarot. I've listened to all of their videos, and I would entirely agree with the things that they say about why they appreciate the Tarot and how it enriches our lives. But I do have a number one. I have a number one far and away above anything else that I appreciate about the Tarot, and that's the connections. That's the connectedness. And the connectedness is twofold. I connect with people. I connect with people about the Tarot on an almost daily basis. People who I have known all of my adult life. Many people who I met doing tarot card readings for and who have become some of my closest friends. And I also connect with people in other ways, online, through my readings, through my classes. And I love that. I love that connectedness. And I love the ahas when I'm talking to someone about the Tarot, or when I'm giving them a reading, or when they're in a class of mine, the light bulb, that goes on when the awareness occurs that, oh, I can use this. This is useful. This is a tool. This is a useful tool to have in my resource box, of how to be a better human being. It's just that practical. I often say that I believe it was designed by people far better, consciousness far greater and more aware and more evolved than myself. And I believe one of the things about the Tarot that's so pertinent right now is it's experiencing this boom, if you will, I call it a renaissance. We're having a renaissance Tarot in the world. Thank you very much. And that's because it was designed for exactly this time. It was designed to help humans wake up to a more exponential or quantum consciousness, and that's very needed today in our culture. And so I think it's just, and that's one of the things I love about the Tarot. I love the fact that now there are just dozens, if not hundreds, of decks and books and YouTube channels and all kinds of resources that we can go to. There's no shortage of information, help available if we're interested in learning the Tarot and learning how to use it practically in our lives. So I very much appreciate that. I'm not counting. Artwork. I mentioned all the many different cards. There's so many beautiful cards and fabulous artwork that there's something really for everybody. And I love that feeling of connectedness with the cards, with myself, with other people. It just keeps coming back around to that. For me, that's what it's all about. And so I'm going to leave it at that because I'm off to work. And this is an experiment for me in how to record a video. I'm quite new at it. And so I thank you for watching. I thank you for checking out Crow Quill Tarot. I thank you for your patience with my technological challenges. And thanks for tuning in. Bye now.